This Saturday, top to bottom, this card is just incredible. We've mentioned it a couple of times already about fighters potentially using this as an opportunity to jump the queue a little bit. I think Steve Aimable versus Jordan Vucenic is a perfect example of this as well. Steve Aimable coming in off that very, very close split decision loss to Perry Goodwin back at Cage Warriors 113. If Jordan can get the job done against such a veteran, if you like, in comparison, when you look at records, it's a huge statement.
Yeah, massive. Man, I've been calling Steve's fights for years as well. Josh and I actually called some of his fights on what is now Cage Warriors Academy Southeast. It was called British Challenge MMA back in the day. Josh and I have called some of Steve's fights on that show, and always just been a guy who it seems to have like unlimited energy, right? Like he can go for 3 rounds, and by the end of the third, like you think, oh, he's just warming up. Like he could probably do another 3 if you asked him to. Great takedowns, great boxing. Everything's just got a little bit better every time you see him. Look, he came up short against Mads Burnell. Like I know he missed weight for that one and couldn't fight for the title, so I don't know how much that affected him mentally. But look, Mads Burnell, right? One of the best in Europe. Like there's no shame in losing to Mads Burnell. And look, who doesn't rate Perry Goodwin, right? And that fight again, like you say, really, really close. I don't think anyone would have been massively more upset if Steve had taken that fight. I'd love to see it again one day. Look, if Steve can get a couple of wins now, and Perry ends up, in a position where he's fighting for the belt or something one day, or maybe they can test the belt between them if someone like Morgan or Max Koga wins it and gets signed to the UFC. There's definitely a bit of narrative there. But Steve's a stud, and what an opportunity this is for a young guy like Jordan, who is obviously at a much further phase of his development than his record suggests. Like he's not your average 5-1 guy, right? This guy has got high level experience and a solid skill set, to the point where you're happy to put him in with a 20-odd fight veteran like Steve and not be worried that he's going to be out of his depth. Whatever happens here, if Steve gets the win, it's a solid win over a solid competitor, and it puts him back in the race. If Jordan gets the win, well, all of a sudden we've got another guy to worry about in that Cage Warriors featherweight division.
If we look at featherweight division as well, the other bout in the featherweight division, Paul Hughes against David Stephen, that has got tasty fight written all over it. Of course, Paul last time out landed that massive head kick KO in Manchester. I think when this was first announced, maybe some people were sleeping on Aidan Stephen a little bit and sort of not really rating the matchup. But for those who know MMA and know Aidan Stephen's career, like, this is a tough fight for Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I think stylistically, it's probably the toughest fight he's had so far, right? Like, Aidan will mash you up against the cage and he will drag you to the mat in any number of ways. He's not like a guy who's just going to spam single legs or double legs. He's got plenty of avenues of attack to get this to the ground. Paul, known largely as a striker. So, look, he could surprise us all and defend every takedown or get a takedown of his own and submit Aidan. Who knows? But this is that test that he's going to have. I think Aidan is a guy who, again, maybe flies a little bit under the radar because, he's not out there on social media and talking trash and whatnot. But he's going to upset a lot of people's apple carts if they don't take him seriously. So I'm sure Paul has taken him seriously. You see, it's a weird one, It could be one of those fights that just doesn't stop, and there's constant transitions and takedowns and escapes and exchanges. Or it could be a real stalemate because of the styles clash. Instinct kind of tells me it won't be. But my goodness, again, 2 young prospects and a situation whereby, they've got different skill sets, but they're probably both developmentally at the same level. Hughes has a lot more hype behind him, but Aidan steals that with if he goes out there and guillotines him or something in the first round, well, all of a sudden there's a new problem in the featherweight division, and it's Aidan Stephen.
I definitely think the winner of this goes again, sort of right up to that upper echelon of the division. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't complain to see the winner of Steve versus Jordan against the winner of Paul versus Aiden. I mean, there's a fight made for you.
I think that's probably like natural progression. I think if I was Ian Dean, I'd be thinking about Perry next for the title fight, and then like you say, that almost like a little 4-man tournament between those guys then, and the winner would fight Perry or whoever has the belt at the time. It's just again, kind of credit to Ian's matchmaking and the depth of the division, that there's maybe 3 or 4 guys who you could say would reasonably get a title shot with a win.
You mentioned that title. I mean, Morgan Charrier, you said he came into this from sort of talk about an outsider coming in and just taking over the division. Great win against Lewis Monarch, great win against Dean Truman. And I mean, I'd hate to be tagged in a Cage Warriors tweet about.
He didn't do bad against Soren back either, right?
Of course, sorry, yes.
He pushed Soren to the limit. I think that was a 5-round fight. I think, was it? I haven't checked that now. I'm just cheekily looking at Tapology. That was a 5-round fight, and funny enough, Dean Truman, I believe, was supposed to fight Soren that night, but was injured, and Morgan kind of stepped in late, and Dean was really confident after watching that fight that he would be able to push the pace on Soren back, more than Morgan did and get the victory. So it was very interesting to see Dean then end up fighting Morgan, and Morgan just being a little bit too much for him on the night. I think a lot of that probably had to do with Dean being a lightweight really and not a featherweight, and just having to push himself a bit too much. I'd like to see Dean back at lightweight, hopefully, if he does return to Cage Warriors. But Morgan, man, what a stud! And like you say, he's got that following, so he's friends with a big YouTube and Twitch star in France. They did a reality series together. Morgan helped him lose loads of weight and get fit and stuff. And you only need to look at any tweet that Cage Warriors tags Morgan in, and it just goes nuts. Fight Pass tagged Morgan in something and said could he be the biggest star in France? And Morgan retweeted it, and in French, he said, fumer le comment, which basically just means smoke the comments. And all his mates were just straight in there. I'm going to be giving Morgan loads of shout outs on the broadcast, and then just casually mentioning my Twitter handle just to see if I can get the French support as well. I could do with the boost on Twitter right now, I think. But joking aside, you talk about a guy who's got everything that it's going to take to be a star. The guy can fight. He's got a great persona about him. He's got a lot of charisma and a huge fan base. And look, he's one of those guys that the UFC are surely going to do a Paris show, right? Hopefully we get to do one before Morgan goes, because I think Morgan headlining a Cage Warriors show in Paris or somewhere would just be an awesome end to his Cage Warriors story arc. But if not, surely the UFC have to be looking, because I guarantee that Bellator will want him, right? If they're running shows in France, they're definitely going to be interested, right? Why wouldn't you be? The guy's kind of a sort of counterculture celebrity, if you like, in France. So, I really hope that if we can't get to Paris, that the UFC sign him and then he features you can almost see him like McGregor being the second or third fight in the main card on the UFC's first Paris show, and it's going to be a star-making performance for him. But look, man, Max Koga is no slouch. Again, a bit of a hipster's choice, right? You've got to be kind of into the Euro MMA scene to know Max Koga. But this guy's been about for years. He fought Nicholas Backstrom in Essex randomly 6 years ago. Nobody really understood why that happened. But that was such a crazy fight. It ended in 14 seconds, but it was the winner of that definitely goes to the UFC, and Backstrom ended up doing it. But Koga's fought all over the world since. He's fought in the PFL. He's fought all over Germany. He's a great kickboxer. He's got great submissions, good wrestling, and just that ridiculous amount of experience, veteran savvy. this fight's going to be really cool, man. Like, I think Morgan will probably be the bookmaker's favorite, but I'm sure he's not underestimating Max, and it's definitely not going to be a walkover.
I think it goes back to them veteran tricks you mentioned before with the Kingsley Crawford Ben Ellis fight, where Kurgal have some tricks up his sleeve that maybe Sharia just isn't expecting.
Yeah, maybe, but then you look at Morgan's record, and he's on like 23, 24 fights himself. He's not actually that far behind Max. Like, the thing with Morgan is obviously a lot of MMA in France isn't full MMA. Like, it's not been legal until very recently, so a lot of the what they call pro fights don't have close-fisted strikes on the ground. So you can only like palm strike or no head strikes on the ground at all. So you tend to get messy records because of that, and also because if you're any good and you're French and you want to get fights, you have to go to someone else's backyard and fight a top guy, which means you're potentially fighting guys who developmentally you maybe shouldn't, but you have to do it just to get the fights. And I think Cage Warriors over the years, you've seen guys like Conmonday and guys like that come in, and you look at the record and you think, oh, well, and then he goes out and gives like Jack Shaw an amazing fight or someone else an amazing fight. And you're going to see that with Morgan. He's battle tested. So's Koga. It's going to be a war, man. It's going to be a real war.
If we move on to that last one, Brad, the big one of the night, the big one of the trilogy, Mason Jones against Adam Proctor for the Cage Warriors vacant welterweight title. I mean, from the second this is again one of these fights that I didn't know I needed, but then the second it was announced, it was just like incredible.
It's almost like they just drew names out of a hat, right? Like they just put like 10 of the top Cage Warriors guys in. It's like Mason Jones and then Proctor. Oh, okay, right, why not? But it's one of those for me. Like when it first came out, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, actually, no, that's gonna be great. Like Adam's got, his ground game's so good, and like his fight IQ is amazing, right? And he's training out of a great team, the great coach, and Alex Anland himself, a former Cage Warriors featherweight champion. And we talked about this with Chris Fields earlier. Like Adam's got a coach and a mentor who's been there and done it, right? He knows what the story is. He knows what the responsibilities are. He knows what the pressure feels like, right? And that's really important in developing these young guys. And that's why Alex is turning out to be such a good coach. Adam's ground game's phenomenal. His fight IQ is phenomenal. And he's going to have physical tools in this fight, right? He's probably not used to being massively taller than his opponent and massively heavier, but he could be 15, 20 pounds heavier than Mason in this fight. Like, yeah. There's definitely the potential there. I can't imagine that Mason is going to be, bulking up to 190 pounds after this one, but you've got to think Proctor might be somewhere in that neighborhood. Mason, though, is like, he's one of those guys he's just a little bit different, right? And that from very early in his career, you can just see that he's got that sort of special something about him. His attitude is phenomenal. Like he's never been interested in taking it slow, and it's been kind of a testament to his coaches and to Cage Warriors for kind of like reining him in at times. Like, he's always wanted to go and fight top guys in their backyard, and developmentally he just gets better every time, right? Every single time he's fought on Cage Warriors, he's looked better than the time before. You've never kind of seen him and he's looked a bit flat or a bit drab, and you thought like, oh, what's going on in his camp? He's just improving, and I think to beat Joe McColgan in the way that he did, I rate Joe as being right up there in the Cage Warriors lightweight division. Look at that fight against Mehdi Ben Lakhdar, one of the craziest fights I've ever called. I've never been so glad that a fight was a draw, because it would have been so unfair for either of those guys to lose that fight. And then to see Mason stop him in the first round in the way that he did, just insane, right? Insane. And he just looked to me on fight week and then stepping into the cage and then getting stuck in with Joe. It just looked like the idea of him walking out of that cage without that belt had never crossed his mind. And then you think he took that fight on a couple of days' notice. That's a different animal. Is that going to be enough to overcome the physical tools and the skill set of Proctor? I mean, who knows? Like, I don't even know who's going to be the favourite in this one. I don't know who the bookmakers are going to make the favourite. Are they going to make the bigger guy the favourite? Are they going to make the guy who's arguably fought perhaps a little better competition the favourite? It's going to be interesting. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see the bookmakers' lines actually be very, very close on this, and I think that would be fair. I also think neither guy's got a massive amount to lose. Look, if Mason loses, he's still the lightweight champion. He's gone up in weight and he's lost to a bigger guy, right? That's fine. And if Adam loses, Mason Jones is a beast, right? So it doesn't matter. Like, I'm sure we'll have another go at him somewhere down the line. This to me is like just everything that Cage Warriors stands for. Just like developing guys up to a point where you can just put them in a fight against anyone and you don't know who's going to win because they're that good.
There was a few things you mentioned there. I was lucky enough to talk to both men and talk to Alex Enlund as well, sort of as the fight broke. And one thing Alex told me that I thought was really interesting, that was when he fought Nagarmani for that title, Adam was 18 or 19 at the time, and he specifically made sure Adam was in his corner because he knew one day that Adam would be fighting for a Cage Warriors world title, and he wanted him to be there so he could experience that feeling, he could experience being around it. So it's almost as if he's been there before when it comes to Saturday night. And in the size difference as well, like you mentioned, I know Alex told me on camera when he made the walk against Maddox, I believe he was 193 pound.
Wow.
And Mason said, "Look, I'm probably going to come in 176, 177." He was like, "I'm not going in there to try and be the bigger man." He goes, "I'm going to be quicker. I'm going to be moving smarter." And that's the game plan. I think there has been a lot made of this weight difference, which, I mean, you can't ignore. It's potentially going to be like you say, 15, 20 pounds, but as you say, it's just that it's like the epitome of Cage Warriors, just these two gangsters just ready to throw it down, go for it. And I mean, what a treat for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, look, both of these guys, like, they've just got like supreme confidence, right? Like, if someone drops out the middleweight title fight, I'm sure Proctor would take it. Probably Mason would have a go as well. Like, he'd be like, "Yeah, Matthias Frederick, sure, no problem, I'll have a go at that." Like, it's just that attitude that they've got. And look, a lot of guys have that attitude. And the thing is with guys like Mason and guys like Adam, they're actually ready for it. You know what I mean? It's not bluster. It's not overconfidence. Like, these guys are legitimately two of the best at their craft in this part of the world at this time. Like I say, I can't make predictions. I won't make predictions. But even if I was able to, I don't think I could sit here, look you in the eyes, and honestly say to you, "Yeah, I think this guy's definitely going to win this fight." Because I just don't think that's the situation here. I think it could go either way. And what more do you want? Like, as a fan, the best fights are the ones where you've got no idea who's going to win, right? Like, everyone loves like watching a Bob Sapp squash match. Like, that's all good fun every now and again. But the best fights are the ones where you look at it and look, we've got like Adesanya versus Costa the same night, right? I ain't got a clue who's going to win that fight. Like, you think, well, look, Costa's probably going to gas after 3 rounds, but he hits like a truck for those 3 rounds, right? So I don't know who's going to win that fight. And this, for me, is very similar. I genuinely don't know. Like, if someone said, "I'm going to give you £1 million, but you have to bet it on one of these 2 guys," I'd be like, keep the money, mate. Like, I ain't got a clue.
Brad, I really appreciate your time tonight, mate. I mean, I know a lot of MMA fans are really looking forward to the next 3 nights. But for those who are thinking about tuning in, why should they?
Look, like, Cage Warriors have done some mad shit before. Like, we've been all over the world. We've put some crazy shows on in crazy countries. Like, if you even go back to, like, before I was with Cage Warriors, at one point they did 3 shows in 11 days in 3 different countries, which is nuts. But this is something else, man. Like, for us, it kind of feels like it's one event. So if you take all those like fights from 3 cards and you put them in one, you're never going to see a collection of fights in such a short space of time anywhere in the world that's this good. You're just not. Like, there's fights on every single card which you could legitimately say is probably going to be the best fight of the whole weekend. Like, it's that stacked. And look, it's £5 on Fight Pass, right? Like, even if you're not a subscriber, it's £5, or you probably get a month free, right? They still do that.
I think so. Yeah,
probably. Like, if you're not a Fight Pass subscriber, even if you've subscribed in the past, create a new email address. It's fine. They don't care. Get your 3 month, tune in. It's going to be nuts.
Spot on. Brad, thank you very much for your time tonight, mate.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me
Spot
on.
on.
Man.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Cheers.